Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the podcast, Jeffrey and Buster Verheeck podcast. Today we are talking about the lynching and depression politics, and pretty much what we see and what we have seen in the sources that we've read is that the law has failed. The laws have failed the black community, the black people. What do you feel? Do you think this is a accurate statement saying that the law has failed the black community?
Yeah, I definitely would say that.
Yeah.
Even in modern days, it's been rough for the black community, but especially, I would say that it's gotten slightly better.
Yeah.
We're doing more to help them, in a sense, but it's still not where it should be.
Yeah, it's still not where it should be. Yeah.
But we're
working to that
We've been
point.
slowly moving up. Yeah.
So, what I have seen frequently in the sources that we have read, like the letter from Eleanor Roosevelt and anti-lynching pamphlet produced by the NAACP, you can see that the lawmaker, or you can see that, hold on, the law is being useless. The law is useless. It either is they're too afraid to use the law to stop anti-lynching because they feel that it might be unconstitutional, or they use the law to harm them, to harm a group of people, to suppress them. So that's what we've seen, and that's what we especially see with the white Southerners filibustering to prevent the anti-lynching law, saying that, yeah, well, if we put this law into place, it could get even worse and more out of hand. So I think that statement alone just sees how much they're pretty much encouraging it. They're letting it slide. They're letting it go under the rug. They're just trying to sweep it under the rug, let it continue, and let it, how do you say, build up, but in a more grotesque way. It's let it. It's when a wound festering. It's festering. Letting it fester. Letting the situation. Letting the nasty horror that we know as lynching and black suppressing. They're suppressing the black people and racism. Letting that continue. There's just Southerners filibustering. And I feel that is one of the major themes that we see through all of these sources. Do you agree? Yeah. What are your thoughts about these filibustering Southern leaders?
Yeah, I think it's less out of fear, and for the Southerners at least. Mm-hmm. I think for the Southerners, the white Southerners, it's more out of bigotry and a resistance to change. Especially with, you brought up the NAACP pamphlet, which I looked at. And in that picture, these white adults are bringing their 7
kids. Seven kids.
Yeah, they're bringing children to watch this lynching happen. Mm-hmm. And you can see that that's just perpetuating violence to younger generations. And so those generations are going to keep doing the same thing, and they don't want to change. And you can see in that pamphlet that the little girl on the right, it looks like she's
enjoying it. It looks like she's enjoying where she is. It's utter, propaganda spread through the Southern leaders down to the common folk, and hitting the children as nothing more than something getting slapped on the wrist. It's just something they see in everyday things, and they it's a big event. They go out there and it looks like they're pretty much celebrating it's a horrifying, disgusting thing that just 70 years ago or 80 years ago that it was a normalized thing in the South. It was an
Yeah.
utter terrible, terrible thing, and I just can't explain how I can't even express my thoughts on this barbaric behavior that was just accepted in the South. It was just a accepted thing, and it just wouldn't these like nasty ideas being implanted into these children's head rot them like in a sense, like
Yeah.
I noticed that when reading and when they said that they would fear since they would be like filibustering, relating back to the theme that we've stated. They would filibuster and then nothing would get done. Things would continue as is, and you could see that lynching, people getting lynched, less than 1% of lynchers have been punished. Ready? Ready for this other wild statistic? Okay, and one half the lynched victims have been taken from legal custody. Less than 1% of
Yeah.
lynchers have been punished and they have been punished and they've been punished lightly.
Yeah.
And then
That
more than
actually.
sorry, go ahead, go
Oh,
ahead.
you're good. You're good. That
More
actually reminds me of one of the articles that I read from you. I can't find it right now, but it's when that African American man was being hunted down for supposedly
yeah,
attacking a white
and
woman,
all by word.
and yeah, and when they found the poor guy dead with having been shot, no one was arrested.
Nope.
The sheriff straight up said he knew no one in the posse, even though he talked to all of them
Yeah,
previously and sent them out. He said he knew no one,
yeah.
and no one got punished.
Yeah, yeah. That's just the reality that it was back then. It's a horrible reality that was just something horrific, and
Yeah,
it's you could see this in southern authorities too, right? So you can connect policemen looking another way. You can connect southern politicians looking another way. They just want to sweep it under the rug and let it continue. You can see the sheriff's
yeah,
not caring because it is a black man that is being hunted instead of a white man. It is disgusting. Yeah, you just said it. So from that source, you could say it's the Brownsville Herald. And in the
hmm
Brownsville Herald, I also noticed that people that Mr. Brown, the one who are Bill Rowan, that's what the guy's name was who was attacked. And
yeah,
there are similar cases. These are all similar cases. 5,000 cases. Imagine 5,000 cases just like this one. And it
yeah.
is disgusting. Only 1% get punished and punished lightly. Mind you, it is murder. And they are
hmm
punished lightly. What is, what is going through their heads? And by filibustering, right? And you can see this filibuster they're trying to stall for the bills in the back that we see that were being held up, the NRA extensions and the Social Security bills, hoping that those bills would eventually press on the president so much so that he has to skip the anti-lynching bill and he has to skip over it and give it up. Now that is just a horrible way that politics have just been rooted in the past, and you can see this in the past in things as well, and it is with previous restricting voting IDs, everything like
Yeah,
that that has restricted minority groups from participating in elections, voting, just doing
yeah.
everyday American things.
It's pretty much like they were still following the 3/5 Act, even though that was
Exactly.
abolished.
You can see that now. Not now, not as much now, but
Yeah.
like from this
But then,
article in 1830, Mr. Rowan was killed in 1830. Yeah, but you could see the progression all the way into 1930s. It was a long spanning thing. This was not a 10-year deal. This was a thing that was seen in the Southerners' eyes for many years. All right, I would like to
yeah,
also talk about. Um, I
I
would.
was wrong. It Three-Fifths Act wasn't repealed until 1868, so in the
Yeah, yeah,
1830s it was still in effect.
yeah. It was still in effect, but at the same time, you gotta. This was. You gotta see it. It was a white man's word versus a black man's word, right?
Yeah,
And
there
Mr.
was.
Roan had no chance at even getting a hear. No, he had no fair trial, nothing. The posse hunted him down. It was a pure thing out of hate, out of race hating, right? Pure racism, pure race hate related violence.
Mm-hmm.
Not to act that the authorities still did not get involved. They did not pursue this, right?
Yeah.
So I would also like to connect the filibustering from the New York Times article, the filibustery balks efforts to speed Roosevelt's bills, and I would like to connect it with the first source that we have seen and read, the letter from Eleanor Roosevelt. This thought of, if we filibuster enough, we can prevent these bills from being passed, right? And then you also see the fear that it's being unconstitutional to even step into this idea of lynching is wrong and we should step in as a federal government to stop it. And they're thinking more of it as a state issue. What are your thoughts on this being considered even a state issue?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts about
Um,
it?
yeah, it definitely should be. And I think they said, I forget in which one it was, which figure it was, or like article.
Yep.
They said that if a northerner were to try to talk about how uh, lynching needs to be abolished and like shouldn't be legal,
Mm-hmm.
it would just add fuel to the fire. And so I think that was their excuse for not interfering. And while that's probably accurate, they still could have done something to try to help.
Yes, I say yes. Definitely that question, would it have added fuel to the fire? It would have definitely added fuel to the fire. They felt that their state rights would be impeded on. At the same time, we are saving lives, keep preventing
Mhm.
these lynchings, and they're not even thinking, mind you, they're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about the lynching that is going on, the injustices that is happening on to the black people. They're thinking merely of themselves, white Americans thinking about themselves. And you see that in the past, they little to reflecting about the situation that is going on or not currently, but during that time that was going on, lynching, they would pretty much all focus on it, right? They would focus on, hey, this should be a state matter because, they don't want federal government getting so in. And from the fear of that alone, the president couldn't do anything. That's what he felt like. And yes, you're right. I think they should have done something. And it may have added fuel to the fire. But what's a little fuel to the fire when you can't even protect your own people, right?
Yeah. Because it's all well and good to not want to make things worse, but honestly, if they had done something like the Underground Railroad did and try to extract as many people that wanted to be, um, they would have been able to save hundreds of people.
Yeah. Here, let me look at some more of the notes. So yeah, so leaders. So as we can see, leaders doing nothing was a consistent thing back in the day. The fear they had over the state rights, state power. They had fear over state power. They had fear that if maybe the South would separate or something, like another conflict would arise. But at the same time, you have to look at this as at some point and notice how horrific the events are going on. You just can't let this continue, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. The South felt that it was the South felt that you were impeding on their rights, and that doesn't make any sense. These are human lives, and they're just throwing them away just because they felt that it was not the federal government's, business.
Yeah.
Here's the Senators George Russell, Glass, Smith, Tran. Oh, this is a quote from Filibuster Balks Speeding Bills, right? Senators George Russell, Glass, Smith, Trammell, Bill, Bankhead, and Fletcher are all responding eager to speak. And Senator Bailey and Connolly, who led off all the filibuster, are said to be ready to resume at any time. And then you can see in the next quote, they're threatening the position of the president. They are threatening, hey, if you do not move on, then these other bills that need to be passed in July, mind you, NRA extensions and the Social Security bill needed to be passed in July, before the end of July. So, in a sense, it's a threat, right? They're threatening the federal government. If you don't move on from this situation, this horrific act that we're just going to let go. If you don't move on, then nothing else is going to get done, right?
Exactly.
And that is a common theme you can see in the first article. You can see in the third article with the authorities not doing anything. The first article meaning the feeling that it's unconstitutional to step in, right? Feeling threatened in a sense. So we can see authorities being threatened, or the not stepping in, the lack of authority, the lack of stepping in, the lack of doing human things, being human. We can see another theme is filibustering, preventing these huge problems. What are your thoughts, first off, on my theme about authority, with the lack of presence of authority, the lack of the strong hand that should have prevented this stuff, What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's just they're perpetuating a cycle. They're basically saying, we're not going to let this bill pass. We're just going to keep talking. And unless you guys table it for later, we're not going to get to anything else.
Exactly. So filibustering, the threatening or the lack of authority. You can see the violence that is going on during this time, right? The looking of the other way, and the threat of filibustering, the threat of not passing bills. I think these are the major themes. And not to take away the racism. My gosh. The lynching itself, it's terrible, right? It's huge. It's the major theme. You can see all of this is built around the negatives that the Southerners of lynching the American black people. Americans. They're lynching black Americans because they are racist with a racist agenda, and they are trying to promote their own agenda while continuing this race hate, right? Now, I believe this project is finished. This podcast is finished. Thank you so much, Buster Verheeck, for joining me.
Of course.
It
was my pleasure.
It's been a good podcast, good discussions on topics. Thank you so much, and goodbye.